So in the last video, we were talking about web applications. So in this video, we'll talk about the Azure App Services. So we have web applications, which are developed in, could be a Java or a .NET or a PHP or a Python, could be an Angular or a Node.js or something React.js. And we've seen we need a web server to run the web applications, or basically to run the web applications. So we have IIS web server, a Tomcat, an Apache web server, Apache like an NGIX. There are so many. We might have heard in WebLogic, WebSphere. There are so many tools which runs or act like a web server. So we can run all these web applications which are developed in these various languages on these kind of things. Now we have, so in order to run the web server runs on Windows or Linux operating system, right? OS. So what happens here now? So in order to this one, so we have a Windows virtual machine. I'm just taking it. A Windows server, we can call it as either it could be a virtual machine or a physical machine. So on top of that, we have an WebLogic or a Tomcat or an IIS or a Tomcat application is required in order to run this application. So on top of this, we have an application. So on top of the Windows Server operating system, so we installed some kind of a web server application. On top of that, we deploy the application. So this web servers will run this application and we access these applications. So typically developers will deploy the code into this application folder or application into their web server folders, and it will be accessible. So this is the traditional method what we are doing from so many years. Now, what is the advantage and a disadvantage of this? So we have, as when we talk about an advantage, we have full control on the entire system, including the operating system, including the web server, including the application, and everything we manage it, we control it. That's the advantage. But when we look at it from a disadvantage side, so we are responsible for the management of this particular server from a perspective of OS patches, application patches, or web server patches, then security of the operating system and security of the web server, and the availability of this web server, and all these things we need to ensure that they have been working fine in order to deliver this application. So there is a lot of maintenance headache or maintenance overhead, I would say, called as in to deliver this web application, So now what Microsoft is offering is so as part of the Azure App Services, so we have called as an apps. So App Services provides an ready to use, I would say, called as an a platform, ready to use a platform to run run the applications. So what does that mean by ready to use? So Microsoft, the Azure will take care of Windows Server, and Microsoft will take care of the web server, whether it could be an IIS or a Tomcat, whatever, what we call it as in the backend. So now, as part of app services, he will just provide a platform to run the applications. Now, he is providing an already a virtual machine which is running with a Windows or a Linux. On top of that, an IIS or Tomcat server, which is completely managed by Azure platform, or Azure. So what does it mean by it? The security of this particular server, the patching of this server, the maintenance of this application, the performance of this server, all the maintenance activities will be carried out by Microsoft, by Azure platform team. So we don't need to bother about the maintenance of the backend infrastructure. So no need to maintain the backend infrastructure required to run the application. So we don't need to bother about it. So as part of this services, so Microsoft, the Azure provides one FQDN name and public IP address to the application. So for each and every application we create, so it provides an FQDN. That is something like, as we discussed, a www.iccibank.com, like www.microsoft.com, like that, and an associated IP address to that application so that it can be accessible. Now this application is accessible from anywhere by default, So it is publicly exposed and accessible from anywhere. Okay. So the FQDN name will be like an xxx.azurewebsites.net. So it creates for each and every application, it creates one FQDN name with the name whatever we give, which is like an xxx or whatever it is called as a name, .azurewebsites.net. But later we will see in another how we can have our own name for this particular application. But this is the default name which will be given by it. So what is we simply need to deploy the code into the server. Now we don't have access to this server. We don't have access to an application server like an IIS or a Tomcat. We cannot manage these things. So Azure will provide a feature to deploy our code into this server through like an FTP or an FTPS or HTTP. Yes. Web deployment method, what we call it as it. So now it provides various methods for us wherein we can simply deploy the code into this app services, what we call as the application servers. Later we'll talk about how do we configure them and all these things, but what is the advantage is we see that we don't need to manage the backend infrastructure, which is readily provided by Microsoft based on the configurations. Now like this, we can have multiple applications. Now we use a terminology called as an app service plan. So the app service plan talks about the number of cores required to run the app services, or I would say called as a web applications. The number of cores required to run your app services or web applications. And capacity RAM, memory capacity, and storage capacity, and security features, then connectivity features, connectivity features. Now, the app service plan talks about allocation of number of cores. Now, do you want a 2 cores or a 4 cores or 8 cores or 16 cores? And how much capacity of RAM you want to allocate? So when we go to the VM, so we generally say like okay, in order to run this, I need a 4-core processor with 16 GB RAM with a 512 GB of hard disk space in order to run this particular application. In order to run this application. Run this application. But similarly in Azure, so the app service plan provide basically a capacity. So based on the app service plan, the cost of the resources will vary. So they have various tiers like basic, premium, and isolated. So what happens on one app service plan, we can run multiple applications. So that means that share the resources across the applications. So what does that mean by it? So I buy a capacity, which is an app service plan, which could be a premium or whatever, based on the, so based on the tier, like a basic or a standard or a premium and isolated, the features will get vary, like security features and connectivity features and everything will get vary. So the app service plan premium, okay, it's coming up. So what happens now? So we purchased a premium, which is like a 4 cores with a 16 GB RAM. Then 512 GB of storage, like these things. So we have 4 cores, 16 GB RAM, 512 GB. Now on top of this plan, we can run multiple app services. So this is an application 1. So we can run another application 2, application 3. So this could be, apart from the capacity, this could be an operating system, whether do you need a Windows or a Linux operating system. So we are going to pay for the app service plan, and we run multiple applications on top of this one. So under one single, so in the background, if you ask me that, on a single server, we can run multiple applications in IIS web server or a Tomcat. Similarly here, An app service plan is could be more of a server, having with the capacity, hardware capacity and operating system. On top of that, we can run a multiple applications. Now, each and every application will have an individual FQDN name. So this is an FQDN1. So I would say called as an app1.azurewebsites.net. So this will be unique across the globe. So Microsoft will create a unique URL for each and every application which is coming up here. This is an app service 2. And this is an app service 3. App service 3. Whatever, we can give the name what we want it in the app 1, app 2, app 3. But the Azure will create a unique URLs for each and every. So like this. So we can run multiple applications on the one single Azure service plan. So we want to upgrade this capacity at any point of time, we can upgrade this capacity. So when we upgrade this capacity, automatically that capacity will be shared across all these 3 applications. So we can have, so let's say for some reasons this capacity is not sufficient or one application is consuming more capacity, then we can upgrade this capacity at any given point of time. But yes, there could be some kind of a downtime or disturbance, okay, for these applications whenever we do some kind of an hardware changes. Okay. So let's look at that, how we can create an app service. So app service, so you can search here app services. If it is not found in the favorites, you can search for app services. So click on create an app service, web app. Select your subscription and the resource group. So here, name of the app. So this is the application name. So whatever the name we give it, so it is going to create, like I'm giving it a Venkat app 1, or I would say called as an acute HRMS application. Now we see that acute HRMS and a GUID is getting added here along with the region .azurewebsites.net. If you don't want that GUID, you can simply off this one. Then it checks acute HRMS.azurewebsites.net. If someone else already using acute HRMS, then it will not take. It says that this name is already being taken by someone else. You have to change it. Now, publish code or a container. So based on the application, whether they want to run on the code or a container, run stack, is it in a .NET application or a Java application or a Node application or a PHP application or a Python application? So what application you are going to deploy? So based on the developer, so if the application is developed in .NET, we can choose what version of .NET they wanted. If the application is developed in Java, so we can take the Java version, what Java version is required. And if the application is developed on Node, PHP, or based on the application requirement, we can choose. I'm choosing an ASP.NET, right? Okay. Now I'm not getting a Linux because I selected an ASP.NET because this runs only on Windows. Let's say if I go to a Java. Now we can see Java web server. What is the version of it? Do you want a JBoss, Tomcat, Apache Tomcat, or what is that you want to, where do you want to run? Okay. And you can see Linux or a Windows. Okay. So we can choose whether you want to run in Linux or a Windows, the web server. So I'm selecting an ASP.NET and Windows. So under which region you want to create this particular app service? I'm selecting a central region. Down we can see plan. That is an app service plan. This is the name I'm giving it. I'm giving it called as an acute app service plan. Hyphen called as an app services. Something I can give any name. Yeah, just for. And what capacity you want to have it. Now explore pricing options. You would see various plans based on the capacity. You have some free tier, basic, a premium, and then we see isolated, then dev, test, and anything. Now you can see here for a premium V3P0V3, there is one CPU with 4 capacity of RAM, 250 GB of hard disk, and it can scale up to 30 instances. Okay. And what is the cost of this particular instance per hour and per month? Similarly, if you go with an P1 M13, 2 CPUs with 16 GB RAM with 250 GB storage, and basically a lot of features will get vary also based on the premium, basic, and isolated. It runs completely in an isolated network. We'll talk about this tiers later, but I just want to give you that. Okay. Now, so based on this one, you can choose. I'm choosing just a premium P1 V3. Select and review and create. So we have this app service got created. Go to app services. We can see acute HRMS. I'll create one more. I'm giving it acute marketing. So acute marketing dot Azure websites.net. I'm selecting in ASP.NET. So here I can choose the existing plan, which is already created, or you can create your own new plan. So if I'm selecting an existing plan, it is not allowing me to choose that because we already selected in that plan. Review and create. Okay. Go to resource. Now go to app services. Now we would see two app services. So these are two different applications running on the same app service plan. Like this, you can create multiple app service plans. On the app service plans, you can create multiple applications. Now let me go to the Acute HRMS. I'm just copying this URL. Now you'll be able to see the default domain. The overview page, you can see default domain. This is the FQDuer name of this one. So I'm going to an incognito window. I'm pasting it here. So Microsoft will put a default sample application. It's giving your web app is running and waiting for your content. So just put a small web page or a small content already. And just to say that, okay, whether this web app is running or not. And when I go to the another app service, I would see acute marketing, copy this one and paste it over here. So it's saying coordination, your web app is running and waiting for your content. So like this, so we can create multiple app services, okay, in Azure, and we can choose the different region. So where do you want it, in South India or Central India or everything? Now, what is the advantage here now? We don't need to manage the server. We don't need to manage the IIS web application or anything. We need to simply deploy our code. Okay, so in the next video, we'll talk about how to deploy the code into an app services. And we'll also talk about the difference between the pricing tiers, SP plans.